Aarav stretched, his back cracking. He was tired. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones, making every movement feel like a monumental effort. He had been at his desk for hours, the glow of the computer screen the only light in the room. His eyes were dry and strained from staring at the screen for so long. The clock on his computer glowed 11:47 p.m. Another late night. It seemed like these late nights were becoming more frequent, each one blending into the next. The deadlines were relentless, and the work never seemed to end. He was used to it. Deadlines were deadlines. The pressure to perform, to meet expectations, was always there. He had learned to push through the fatigue, to keep going even when his body screamed for rest. He packed his things, eager to get home. The thought of his bed, soft and inviting, was the only thing keeping him going. He could almost feel the comfort of his pillow, the warmth of his blanket. The office was eerily quiet, deserted. The silence was almost oppressive, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle of the day. It was as if the building itself was sleeping, waiting for the dawn to bring it back to life. He was always the last one to leave, the lone figure in a sea of empty desks and darkened screens. It was a strange feeling, being the only one left, but he had grown accustomed to it. He walked down the empty hallway, the only sound the click of his shoes on the linoleum. Each step echoed, a reminder of his solitude. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. Each door he passed a silent witness to his late-night exodus. The elevator dinged, its arrival a jarring contrast to the silence. The sound was almost startling in the quiet, a reminder that the world outside was still moving, even if his own had come to a standstill. Stepping inside, Aarav pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors slid shut with a soft whoosh, enclosing him in a small, dimly lit space. He was alone, finally going home. The ride down was brief, but it felt like an eternity. Each floor they passed brought him closer to the end of his long day and the promise of rest.
The elevator hummed, its usual mechanical symphony. Tonight it sounded different, louder, more insistent.
Aarav tried to ignore it. He closed his eyes, picturing his comfortable bed.
The elevator lurched. He opened his eyes. It had stopped, on the 5th floor.
Aarav frowned. He hadn't pressed that button. He jabbed at the ground floor button. Nothing. He tried the open door button. It remained stubbornly lit. The air grew colder. He felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine.
The doors slid open. The 5th floor was cloaked in darkness, empty, silent. A low hum emanated from the end of the hallway.
Aarav hesitated. He wasn't supposed to be here. This floor was under construction. He cautiously stepped out. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dust and something else, something metallic. He walked towards the humming. Each step echoed in the silence, amplifying his fear.
He found the source of the humming, a lone, flickering fluorescent light. It cast long, dancing shadows.
He turned to leave. The elevator was gone. Panic seized him. He was trapped. He fumbled for his phone. No signal.
Suddenly, the elevator reappeared. The doors slid open. He rushed inside, jabbing at the ground floor button. It lit up, then flickered off. The elevator began to move, down. It stopped on the 3rd floor. The doors opened to reveal more darkness. Eerie shadows danced at the edge of his vision. He slammed his fist on the closed door button. Nothing. He was trapped. The elevator had a life of its own now. It lurched again, plunging downwards, faster and faster. His stomach churned.
Oh no, please stop.
It screeched to a halt. The doors shuddered open. He was in the basement. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. A single bare bulb cast a sickly yellow light, revealing cracked concrete walls and rusted pipes. And something else. A figure, standing at the far end of the room.
Who's there?
The figure was tall and gaunt, shrouded in shadow. It seemed to float just above the ground. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light. Aarav's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't move, couldn't scream.
You should not be here.
The figure glided towards him, its eyes never leaving his. He could feel its icy presence. It reached out a hand, a long, skeletal hand with fingers like claws. Aarav squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the touch.
No, this can't be happening.
He opened his eyes. The figure was gone. The elevator doors were closing. He was alone. Aarav, I escaped, for now. He slumped against the wall, his heart pounding. The elevator began to ascend. Slowly, he watched the floor numbers tick by. He was going up, back to the lobby, back to safety. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Relief washed over him. It was almost over. The elevator stopped. His heart sank. The doors opened. Aarav, this isn't the lobby. He wasn't in the lobby. He was on the 13th floor, a floor that didn't exist. The air was frigid. He could see his breath. The hallway was shrouded in an unnatural fog. He couldn't go out there, but he couldn't stay in the elevator either. He was trapped. He was going to die here. He sank to the floor, despair washing over him. Aarav, the figure, the basement, the 13th floor. It's all too much. He heard a noise, a soft whisper, coming from the hallway. He looked up. The figure was back. It was the same figure that had haunted his dreams, the same one that had appeared in his nightmares. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows dancing on the walls as if mocking his fear. Standing just outside the elevator, its presence was almost tangible, a dark silhouette against the dim light. The air grew colder, and he could feel the chill seeping into his bones. Its eyes glowed in the fog. It beckoned him, whispering voices. Come, follow. He had a choice. The voices were soft, yet insistent, pulling at the edges of his consciousness. He felt a strange compulsion to obey, to step into the unknown. Stay and face the unknown in the elevator. The elevator felt like a cage, its walls closing in on him. The buttons glowed faintly, offering a false sense of security. He could stay, but he knew deep down that staying meant surrendering to his fears, or follow the figure into the fog. He stood. The fog was thick, almost impenetrable, but it seemed to call to him, promising answers to questions he hadn't even asked yet. He felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing him towards the figure. Aarav, I know what I have to do. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of his resolve. He had made his decision. There was no turning back now. He stepped out of the elevator and into the fog. The air was thick and heavy, each step feeling like a journey into the unknown. The fog wrapped around him, almost as if it were alive, guiding him forward. The figure turned and glided down the hallway. He followed. His fear was gone. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, but he felt a strange sense of purpose. The figure moved gracefully, almost floating, and he matched its pace without hesitation, replaced by a strange sense of calm. The fear that had gripped him moments ago had dissipated, replaced by a serene determination. He didn't know what awaited him at the end of the hallway, but he was ready to face it. The fog seemed to part before him, revealing a path that only he could see. He walked with a newfound confidence, each step taking him closer to his destiny. He followed the figure to the end of the hallway. The air was thick with tension, each step echoing ominously against the cold stone walls. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat of fear and anticipation. It stopped in front of a door. The door was ancient, its wood cracked and weathered, as if it had stood there for centuries, guarding secrets long forgotten. The only door on the entire floor. It seemed out of place, an anomaly in the otherwise barren corridor, drawing him in with an almost magnetic pull. The figure opened the door and gestured for him to enter. A cold draft seeped out, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. He took a step forward. His foot crossed the threshold, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him, as if he were stepping into another realm entirely. And then everything went black. Aarav, what happened? His voice echoed in the void, swallowed by the darkness that enveloped him. Aarav woke up in his office chair. His heart was still racing, his mind struggling to grasp the reality of his surroundings. The sun streamed through the window. It was morning. He was safe. The familiar sights and sounds of his office brought a fleeting sense of relief. He had been working late and fallen asleep. The exhaustion had clearly taken its toll, blurring the lines between dreams and reality. It was all a dream, or was it? The vividness of the experience left him questioning his own sanity. Aarav, was it really just a dream? He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He looked down at his hand. His fingers trembled as he examined it, searching for any sign that what he had experienced was real. There, on his wrist, was a single, icy-cold fingerprint. The touch was unmistakable, sending a shiver down his spine. It was a chilling reminder that some dreams might be more than just figments of our imagination. He scanned the room nervously, half expecting the shadowy figure to reappear. The office, once a place of comfort, now felt like a cage, trapping him with his fears. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second dragging on, amplifying his anxiety. Time seemed to slow down, as if mocking his inability to escape the lingering dread. Determined to shake off the unease, Aarav stood up from his desk. He needed to clear his mind, to convince himself that it was all just a nightmare. He walked towards the window, letting the sunlight wash over him. The warmth of the sun was a stark contrast to the cold fear that gripped his heart. Taking a deep breath, he tried to calm himself. The rational part of his mind insisted that it was all just a dream, a product of his overworked brain. He looked at his reflection in the window, searching for answers in his own eyes. The reflection stared back, equally confused and haunted by the night's events. But the icy fingerprint remained, a tangible link to the surreal experience. It was a mystery that he couldn't ignore, a puzzle that demanded to be solved. Aarav sat back down at his desk, his mind racing with questions. He knew he had to find answers, to uncover the truth behind the unsettling end to his night.